Isaiah Lanson, I ain't going nowhere. Forget them Power Fives. I'm sticking right here with my HBCU FAMU. This was the right decision. And also, it's a much bigger story now. And then for our feature Friday, we're talking about the HBCU Game Day Classic, a phenomenal move for a big time HBCU publication. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, aka the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. Now, I want to talk about Isaiah Land because it looked as if he posted his top 7 schools that he was going to go to, and none of them were FAMU. That's what it looked like on social media, but it turns out that is not the case. And Isaiah Land has decided to return to FAMU, and this is completely the right decision in my mind. In my mind, it brings the best blend of talent and opportunity, and it's something that we've talked about, right? But all of these things are irrelevant as far as Georgia, LSU, Texas, which we'll all get into in the next segment. They're all irrelevant now because he is a FAMU Rattler. And like I said about the idea of talent meeting opportunity, to me, this is something that I've really started to learn and more so recognize, I should say. I've known it, but I wanted to recognize it. Sometimes talent doesn't always shine out. Like, good talent will be found. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of times good talent don't have that opportunity. And talent without opportunity is pretty much irrelevant. And the lack of opportunity does not mean that there is no talent present. And that's something that I've really been able to realize. And I think sticking at FAMU, he's not going to run into the problem of talent and opportunity not meeting. Excuse me. He's not going to run into the opportunity not being given to him. He's not going to run into wasted talent. And that's why I think it's done well. And I thought him entering the transfer portal was a bit odd anyway, because I could have sworn that Isaiah Land was calling out all the Power Five schools who skipped out on him, who missed him in recruiting the first time. I could have swore that would happen. And then when he came out and said he was in the transfer portal, I was like, man, am I tripping? Did he not say that when he won his Buck Buchanan award, saying, no, I'm glad I did that at FAMU, nowhere else I don't want to do it? I could have sworn that's what was said. This move, returning to FAMU, is much more in line with what I thought I read. I thought I was remembering wrong for a second, but this is great. And I think it's a great move because Coach G tweeted something interesting out on Twitter. I think it was either yesterday or maybe 2 days ago. I don't know. It was recently. And I think it was directed towards the Isaiah Land situation. I think so. I don't know. But it was basically how many FCS to FBS guys got drafted. He was really talking about HBCU guys, though. He specified it later on. He was speaking directly to HBCU to FBS players, and it was none. None of the players got drafted who went from an HBCU to an FBS school. Is that coincidence? I don't know, right? But it was an interesting note. And I said, you know what? I think I know why. And I think it has to do with, or I ain't gonna say I know why, but one of the things that they could run into the problem of is opportunity and talent not meeting. Now, with Isaiah Land, he just came and dropped 19 sacks last year. Nobody is questioning the talent on this side, especially not me. I understand that Isaiah Land is extremely talented. I don't think he would go in there and be like, oh, wow, I do not belong here with these LSU guys. I don't think so, right? Had the opportunity when he goes in there. I've seen a lot of talented freshmen and everything go in there and not pan out. And it doesn't mean they're not talented. It does not mean that at all. But here's one thing that freshmen have as an advantage when they go in there and it's a lot of talent. It's a crowded room. Is they're young. So when they go in and they meet or they go in there and they play, well, okay, I didn't get to play this year, but next year, okay, I'll get my turn. Or the year after that, I'll get my turn. Maybe junior and senior year is where I get to shine. Isaiah Land doesn't have that opportunity. See, when it's a crowded room, a freshman can redshirt. They can wait it out. They have time. Time is not something that Isaiah Land has. Isaiah Land is going in there on a prove it deal, basically. You know, like when the professionals, when somebody gets a deal, it's like, all right, they get this low budget deal, but you get this opportunity to show that you're worth this big time deal. Now, for Isaiah Land, the low budget deal in a situation is going to a place where you're kind of starting behind. You're already coming in after spring ball. Now, this doesn't happen. This is what he's avoiding. But you would have already been coming in after spring ball. And then all these people have been here for years. They know the system better than you. Now you really got to be better than them by a significant margin to get in and get your play time. It was going to be hard. It was going to be hard. And we're going to talk about what he left behind in the next segment and why that's so impactful. But it would have been a very difficult task. And it involved betting on himself in a way that it's good to have that confidence in yourself, but I just don't think it was worth the risk. The reward is exponential, though. The reward of achieving that risk or getting over that hurdle is exponential. But you had 19 sacks. The reasons these these Power 5 schools are coming to these HBCUs to see you is the same reason that scouts would do it as well. Now, granted, they would want to see you on a bigger platform, but 19 sacks, 20 some tackles for a loss, that sets up for a Senior Bowl appearance, in my opinion. So you can quell some of those things. Like Joshua Williams came in and he was a D2 guy. He got drafted in the 4th round because he was able, I ain't gonna say that's the only reason, but one of the reasons was he was able to say, I can play with these big name guys. I just went to Fayetteville State. My talent isn't on the quote unquote Fayetteville State level or whatever the heck that's supposed to mean, right? I think he didn't have to worry about it. And I want to be very clear. Talent isn't absent. It isn't. And even if he went to Georgia or Texas or Memphis, it would not have been absent. He would not have been out talented. That's not what I'm worried about. So I don't want to get it confused. It's just opportunity. You look at Jamison Williams. Jamison Williams and Jermaine Johnson are really good examples of this. Jamison Williams, extremely talented. Couldn't beat out the Ohio State guys. But now that he goes to Alabama, by a lot of people, he's considered the best wide receiver in the draft class that just passed up. And if he didn't have a real bad injury that was going to make him miss part of the season, he probably would have been the first pick overall. I mean, not the first overall pick, the first wide receiver pick over some of the people that he couldn't beat out at Ohio State. You look at Jermaine Johnson. He didn't get much play time at Georgia. He went to Florida State. He was able to play there. He was a first round pick. See, we're not about to sit here and tell me that these guys aren't talented, but they had to transfer out of situations because the opportunity was not presented to them. They went somewhere where they had the opportunity and they brought their talent, and now it's the perfect marriage. I would have hated for Isaiah Land to be in a situation where he only had 1 year and he was starting kind of behind the 8 ball, and there was so much talent in the room, so much of a crowded room on that defensive line wherever he went, and now the opportunity just did not present himself. That would have been a tough situation, a tough pill to swallow. All that momentum you built, 19 sacks that didn't go somewhere else. Tough risk, and I think it's the right decision that he didn't do it, because if he replicates this at FAMU, he's setting himself up well. I don't care where you are, talent will be found. And FAMU getting 19 sacks at FAMU is a pretty good start to being found. Now, going forward, we're going to talk about what he left on the table. And honestly, I think the fact that he returned is like a much bigger deal to me than if he would have left. That's just my opinion. I'm going to tell you why going forward. But first, I want to tell you about Built Bar. And this is the true story, a true testimony. I asked one of my friends who finally got his hands on some Built Bars. And I had to ask him, what you get? What do you think? Told me he got a cookies and cream before it was time to go work out. And he said, man, this thing is good. This thing is delicious. And I said, I told you. He's been listening to me and he's been laughing like, man, nah, these Built Bars really like, yes, they really like that. They are really like that. And listen, I know you're probably listening right now. So if you hear it, shoot me a message or whatever. But I ain't gonna say your name. But man, I had to give you a story because some people think I just be exaggerating when it comes to these Built Bars. No, I'm dead serious. Built Bars are the best protein bar on the market with 17 grams of protein, 4 grams of sugar, and four net carbs with a enormous selection of delicious flavors. Built Bar is exactly what you need for a snack, for a pre-gym meal or pre-gym fuel, I should say, not a meal. It's not a meal replacement. But Built Bar is exactly what you need no matter what you are shooting for. Now, where you find them? Built.com. What do you need to do? Use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off your offer. All right, so we keep on rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day every day. And Isaiah Land is a FAMU Rattler. Let's look at what he left on the table and why his return is a bigger story to me than his departure would have been. Now, he had 2 absolute football factories that he left waiting. They wanted him. Let's remember he posted 7 offers that were given to him by a multitude of schools, but we're only going to focus on 3. And that's 2 football factories and an absolutely crazy fan base. Let's start off with the football factories, though. Georgia offered him, and let's not sit and act like we don't understand the appeal in Georgia. I know my Florida listeners probably sitting there like, man, forget Georgia. Nah, man, forget all that. We understand the University of Georgia and what they present and what they bring to the table. They had 5 defensive players drafted in the first round this year on defense. I don't think y'all hear me. Georgia had 5 players drafted in the first round, all on defense. Having 5 players drafted in the first round is an accomplishment in and of itself. To have them all on the defensive side of the ball, that's remarkable. But wait, there's more. It's like I'm an ad on TV. But wait, there's more. Not only do they have 5 players drafted on the defensive side of the ball, they also had 3 of those players on the defensive line. And what does Isaiah Land play? Yes, you got it right. He is an edge rusher. What did the edge rusher from Georgia do this year? Get drafted number 1 overall. And Georgia consistently puts out talent into the league. But I'm talking about this year specifically on the side of the ball that Land plays, on the side of the ball or in that position group that Isaiah Land plays in. You had 2 defensive tackles, a defensive end, and a linebacker. But hold on. Don't forget the safety, but that's in the back end. And then hold on, you had Jermaine Johnson, who I just told you about, went to Florida State. He left, and he still got drafted in the first round. They know how to bring in and develop some good linemen, right? I know he doesn't go into the Georgia pile, and he shouldn't. He goes into the Florida State pile. That's my opinion, right? But that says a lot for what Georgia can do with defensive linemen, how they find defensive linemen, the eye that they have for talent. This is all in 1 year. This is remarkable job. So you get the allure. Now, they have 15 players drafted, but the ones right underneath them were LSU, better known as NFLSU, an absolute football factory. In my personal, humble opinion, the best producing school in college football. That's my opinion. There's a lot of people who can, there's a few people, there's not a lot. There's a few people who can say that they put out talent on par at the same rate as LSU. But there's not a school who can definitively say they put out more consistent talent than LSU. And there's like no comparison. There's nobody who can say that. It isn't. And this isn't to say that they're watching everybody, but Alabama can't say that either. Ohio State can't say that. Georgia can't say that. These are the premier NFL producing schools, and Isaiah Land had offers from 2 of them in Georgia and LSU. This says a lot, and you could really say everything that you just said or that I just said about Georgia and apply it to LSU, except not on the defensive line specialty, just the ability to continuously put out players. He left out both of those. And then a crazy fan base in Texas where, man, you playing against one of the largest fan bases. I'm talking about NIL deals probably going to be absolutely ridiculous if you go to University of Texas. And, I mean, he would have been stepping into a similar situation that he was last year, except instead of all HBCUs, it would have been 1 school in University of Texas that had no NFL draft selections, and you trying to be the first one. Look, if you want to hear about it, and I couldn't help but take the shot because Jonathan Davis, host of Locked On Longhorns, is a really good friend of mine, and I just couldn't help but take the shot at him. I'm sorry, I had to. I'm in a good mood today, but he turned that down too. crazy fan bases, NFL factories. I'm talking about if you go to Georgia and LSU and you perform marginally well, you can write your ticket to the NFL and pin. Guys do all right at these schools and they get opportunities. He turned that down to go to Florida A&M, and that's why it's a much bigger story to me. See, if he was going to leave, all right, it happens. Chalk it up to being a small school. Big schools are going to take your talent. It happens. That's nothing to me. It's like a Montana State guy transfers to, I don't know, not UABB, UAB, University of Arkansas, Birmingham, or Alabama, Birmingham, or they transfer to a UCF. There you go. That's a better one. You have somebody transfer from Montana State to UCF. It's not a big deal. It happens to small schools all the time. Right now, we're at a place where we don't want it to happen, but it's not really a big story. Maybe for us right now at the moment, but in the big grand scheme of things, it's not to me. It's not irrelevant, but it just doesn't hold the same weight. But then when you look at everything that has transpired since he's entered his name into the transfer portal, all the way up into saying, I'm sticking here, my family. Maybe if he would have just entered the transfer portal and then just said, no, I'm coming back to FAMU, it'd have been like, okay, that's good. That's great. But to enter the transfer portal and then say, I have offers from the likes of Georgia and LSU, we know what they can do. And to then say, I'm coming back to FAMU, this is huge because now it feels like you chose the HBCU. It feels like you chose to be at FAMU as opposed to everybody else. If I didn't know who was offering you, I might not have had the same feeling. It might not have had the same impact, held the same weight. But knowing everything, the full transparency that it seemed like we got throughout the whole process, that made this a significantly more impactful story to me, and it should to you as well. Now, this is like a +5 on the impact meter. If you would have left, it was gonna be like a -2. That's the difference that I'm talking about. This is a huge deal that he chose FAMU over the option or the prospect of going to one of these big colleges that is going to give you a lot of endorsements. Everybody's clamoring for the Texas guys, or maybe even being a football factory. And if you perform well, nearly writing your check in pen. If you go to a Florida, excuse me, if you go to a Georgia or an LSU, I'm super happy. This is a 5. This is a 5 right here, guys. So I'm extremely happy with this decision. Now, something else I'm ecstatic with is the HBCU Game Day Classic. This is a move where Lincoln University is pairing up with HBCU Game Day, the publication, and I think it's a really good move for the publication itself. But first, let me tell you about BetOnline, because betonline.net is the best place for all of your sports wagering. See, last night there was no action, but we're right back at it tonight with the NBA playoffs. And we have a couple of series tied up at 1-1. I'm trying to see what is Ja going to do, because Ja had 2 really good games in the first 2 games of this series. And as y'all can tell, Ja's my favorite player. I'll just be honest. I'm a Pels fan to the death. Don't get me wrong. But Ja, my favorite player. What's going to happen? Dylan Brooks is ejected. How much is Steph going for today? All of these questions, well, it's not today, but all of these questions will be answered going forward. And when these questions are open, make sure that you're answering them on BetOnline by putting your money where your mouth is. BetOnline has all that and more. Some of your favorite Vegas casino games, along with MMA and all things in between. That's why they are the fastest and easiest way to wage on all of your favorite sports. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. I want to talk about HBCU Game Day making a interesting move for their publication in founding the HBCU Game Day Classic with Lincoln University. See, the founder is a CIAA guy, right? Came from Winston-Salem State. You got Lincoln, CIAA. It makes sense. It just all meshes. And the reason I think this is so cool, so dope, is because it's us. And I don't just mean in the way of Black-owned businesses. Like, that's great. I fully support Black-owned businesses, right? The shorts I'm wearing under here right now, for those who are looking at me on YouTube, the shorts I got on right now under here are from a Black-owned business. Trust, I believe in supporting it. But it's different because I would love to see a Black-owned business host or sponsor an HBCU tournament, classic, whatever. But this is an HBCU publication. This is us. Like, I mean that to the core, in the sense of, I don't have any questions of what the motive is for HBCU Game Day doing this. I have none. And that's because I know that they're fully invested in seeing HBCUs flourish because that's their business. That is their business. HBCUs, it's their brand, it's everything. See, some people may feel like HBCU Game Day is synonymous with HBCU athletics. Depending on who you ask, some people will say that. And I definitely think they have a case. You see what they've been doing over the multitude of years that they've been in business. But now you're putting your name on something where it's not, oh, I think, no, they are synonymous with this tournament. They're synonymous with it. There's no taking it, there's no, oh, that's just not where I go to get my information. No, you're at this game, you're at the HBCU Game Day tournament, the basketball classic. I can't express how impactful this is to me. And it's something I really want to see more of. And like I said, I know there's not many that I feel like would really fit that mold. It's kind of specific. It's not that many of them that are national that I think could actually pull it off. I just think with this move, it's a situation where you're having HBCU sponsored, an HBCU event with HBCU people there, with HBCU media there. It's gonna be when I think I'm gonna try to find some way to get here because I think it's gonna be a whole lot of HBCU love and a whole lot of HBCU buzz all in the room. Like this is gonna be crazy. But it's in November, right? And to make it like an analogy, so to speak, it's like if Locked On, which everybody knows, puts on the best national network daily podcast coverage. Everybody knows that. But what if you made a podcast convention? Now, some people are gonna sit there and just think of Locked On immediately because we do put out the best content. This is facts. Ain't no stuttering when I say it. I know this to be true. But now you put on a convention and it's like, okay, nah, Locked On is really undeniably in this podcast game like that. And that's what I think that this does because for those who maybe didn't know HBCU Game Day, you're gonna see this. They're gonna know it's around, and it's gonna be impossible to separate them. But what is it, right? Enough of talking about how big it is, what a step it is for the company. What is it? It's a game. It's a partnership with Lincoln, so obviously they're gonna be a part of the tournament. And then you also have a couple of other schools. You have Cheyney, excuse me. You're gonna have University of District of Columbia. You're gonna have Bluefield State, and it's a 2-day basketball tournament in November. And Game Day, as a media team, will have behind the scenes, and then they'll also have live coverage on their website. It just makes sense. Media companies partnering with basketball and football and all of these things, it just makes sense logically to do. And I'm glad that it's us. I'm glad that it's an HBCU publication covering this HBCU event because I know the intentions are all pure. And that's what makes me happiest about it. Now, next week, don't forget about us. We will be back on Monday. We're here Monday through Friday. So continue making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. I hope to never make you regret it. Now, for our second listen of the day, go check out one of our conference shows. We have a multitude: Locked On SEC, Locked On ACC, Locked On Big 12, Locked On Pac 12. Go get educated on some of these other conferences as well. They're putting on great content. I told you, Locked On is the best podcast network out there. Daily coverage Monday through Friday, 5 episodes a week. You're not going to want to miss it. And if you're looking for me in the meantime, in between time, you can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Until next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.